Everybody, we are here with Mr. Cory Fraiman-Lott. He is the cinematographer of the new short Homesick that came out premiered at South by Southwest, and we're here to chat with him. Cory, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thanks for chatting with me.
Absolutely. Um, I really liked the short. I thought it was nice and disturbing and also funny. But which is my favorite combo.
Yeah.
But can you give us a brief synopsis of the plot and what it's about?
Yeah. So we uh, start with our hero Eduardo, who is arriving at this sort of seedy motel and in the beginning stages of some type of service, and it's revealed that he is taking a second shot at uh, his childhood, reliving his childhood. And so we see him kind of rebirthed into this experience, and we get a kind of crash course of a typical happy American childhood. And as he's going through this experience, the seams start to unravel a little bit, and he sort of gets a peek behind the curtain of what's going on here, and then is sort of quickly, abruptly dropped back into his everyday life, and the experience is over.
Yeah, thrust into adulthood after a few very awkward moments
Yeah, yeah.
of not being able to process things. Now, as the cinematographer, what were the parameters of your job? What did you do?
Well, as cinematographer, a big part of the job is establishing the look, sort of finding the look with Will, our director, and in this instance, also in heavy collaboration with our production designer Cheyenne Ford, and really helping to set the tone visually, since it is this sort of genre piece that dabbles a little bit in horror, but a little bit in comedy, and sort of threading that line. So working with Will about our sort of visual language from our different compositions, but also our sort of camera movement and color palette was a big aspect in this one as well. And yeah, for this in particular, we've got these really two clear-cut sections, this frame story, on either ends of the actual service, and then when he's in this immersive experience, and so really wanting to separate the look between those two, so one way that we did that was shifting our aspect ratio from a sort of taller, more claustrophobic 4:3 ratio to, as we're going through the birthing experience, widening out to like a full 16:9, which I just thought was a nice way. That was something that sort of struck me in my initial read of the script. That would be a nice way to kind of help be a nice distinction between these two worlds, but also help heighten the kind of claustrophobia of the adulthood, the sort of loneliness of the adult world, and then really have this kind of liberation as we were rebirthed and have our kind of point of view widen out. And I guess on a similar vein there, the camera movement really shifts too, and we really wanted this sort of formal, more static, oftentimes wider angle lenses for our bookended pieces, and then much looser, much messier, much more spontaneous, mostly handheld in our more like idyllic childhood experience.
Right. I love to really get into the craft and the minutia of what people are doing behind the camera, be it the director, the cinematographer, the production designer that you mentioned, Cheyenne Ford, because people don't notice these things. And in particular, it's easy to look at the screen and go, okay, cool, that looks crisp, that looks good, whatever. But sometimes we forget that even the movements of the camera, the aspect ratio, like you were talking about, can really affect the tone of the storytelling, and where it goes. Now, with you being the cinematographer, how did you work with Cheyenne Ford and the director, um, uh, in coming up with the visual language? I mean, was there kind of a triad of creativity going on, or did others cancel each other out, or like how did you guys work?
Yeah, well, I mean, I do. For me, I love using visual references. It's such a great way to kind of get on the same page when you're, especially in early stages, and sort of talking about just initial sparks of ideas. And so right away we had a lot of color ideas from Will, who brought in these a lot of paintings actually that had these really strong browns and greens and oranges. But then looked at like a lot of Yorgos Lanthimos that had these really great wide angle frames that were so unsettling, and often really high angle frames. And For the sort of childhood moments, I was pulling a lot from We the Animals, which has such great subjective shooting and really like sets you into this sort of childlike mentality just by their camera placement. So I love to just sort of start by calling a lot of those references together and sort of seeing what works and what doesn't from a color point of view and from a lensing point of view. And and then Cheyenne put together this really exhaustive sort of production Bible that went scene by scene, and she laid in sort of different design ideas that she had, sort of prop ideas, our location photos. We would put in Will's initial storyboard drawings, some of my visual references, and start to sort of build this kind of collage of different ideas as we got more and more specific. Um, and and then, as is often true with short films, our time to prep and get into it was pretty brief, and we didn't even really get to scout the location in advance, which is can be so key. So it was this kind of truncated thing of we arrive, we see our sort of hero house location, and have to make a lot of decisions really quickly, which makes it even more important that everyone is so on the same page about tonally what's working and sort of the things we want to emphasize when we get to a space like that. And same with our sort of motel location as well. But I really in this in particular, I felt we pretty early on wanted to use this extremely narrow color palette, which I thought was just such a fun way to add that slight stylization to letting us know we're in this sort of genre piece. It's such a great sort of combination that immediately is so like sickly and unnerving and sort of sets up a
Right,
horror
right, because
way.
when it opens, it's like tons of greens and browns,
Right.
like you were talking about, and just
It's very seen
very,
immediately.
yeah.
Yeah, but it's also super, there are tones that are really natural. So it's something that also can bleed into the like more idyllic sequence, but still leave you with this like flavor of just like overly sweet saccharine and so I thought it was a really nice kind of duality of those colors that it can play to both of those moods really well. And so once we sort of found that, being able to kind of be as pure to that as possible, whether it was in Cheyenne's sort of palette in the dressing of the house, or we used a lot of color filtration to, in more natural settings, our exteriors to help kind of push that. And then in our color grade process as well, making sure that was still really prominent. So that was just a really kind of clear way that all of these different departments were kind of working in harmony, which I thought was really cool.
Are there any are there any shots that you are particularly proud of in this short, that you were like, ah, we got it,
Yeah, well, one element that I was really drawn to in reading the script was how we shift into this like extremely subjective point of view when Eduardo goes through this process, and this idea that we go through the birth canal and we come out and we're in the mother's arms. And so I immediately started just getting excited about ways to really immerse yourself in that point of view. And so one sort of technical component that we played with was using this piece called a low angle prism, which is sort of like a periscope that you can put on the front of the camera that helps kind of bend your point of view to like a 45-degree angle, which normally is used to get really low to the ground.
Mm.
But in this instance was a really nice way to kind of work with Leslie Frey, our actress who played the mom, and allow her to kind of cradle the front of the camera, but still kind of keep it in a configuration that I could operate, and really sort of allow her to kind of hold us in her arms. So that was something that we tested early on, and Airy Rental let us sort of come in and do some tests with those pieces, and immediately it like was clearly totally the right piece, which was very exciting. And then on set it worked really well to kind of put us in that point of view as we transition into this like new strange sequence. So that was an exciting moment when all that came together.
Yeah, that shot in particular was pretty effective right after the birthing, and then like
Right.
you're like, what? You're right there
Yeah.
breastfeeding on.
Yeah.
You're like,
Totally.
what?
I
You
know.
know. And can just to get into the technicality of it, I mean, can you give us an example of a difference between a subjective shot in the film versus kind of just an observational shot?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for me, I like to think of that as sort of being in some character's point of view versus really being a sort of outsider. And in the
Okay.
case of our motel sequences, that enhances this sense of voyeurism and how just kind of unsettling it is out of the gate. So putting our lens sort of out of the action, sort of spying in from another room, um, to me really followed that, and then in our childhood sequences being literally in someone's point of view with the characters looking right at the lens, but even something that I think We the Animals does this really well, just putting the camera at a height that is a little untraditional, and there's these great shots of the brothers like laying on the carpet and just being sort of down on their level. So we really looked at that as a way to you know be sort of hit those nostalgic tones and be you know uh, really more kind of youthful, but it also really sets you in Eduardo's mindset in those moments. So like the sequence of him wrestling with dad, just trying to be really low and on their level, and sort of
Hmm.
uh, in the mix with them, for me, really helps that sequence feel like you're reliving this memory.
Yeah, definitely. And the short also reminded me of a lot of the immersive experiences that I've gone to.
Yeah,
I don't know if you're a fan of immersive theater or
totally.
immersive haunts, or but it was just, were there any other haunts that you kind of pulled inspiration from, or experiences you've been to?
That's interesting. It's funny too. I particularly, I think that final shot when you sort of see the scenes of, I mean, this service almost is like putting on an immersive show for
Yeah, yeah.
people who just maybe don't know that they're going into a show. So it is pretty funny how much it feels like that when you sort of see the tube and the the employees at work. That didn't really occur to me when we were filming. But it actually, you know what though, I will say the birthing sequence, in part because of the set that we built, it really does feel like you're sort of walking through this set. And I mean, part of why immersive theater is so fun to me is just how like all encompassing and detail oriented it is, and that's such a cool aspect. But it didn't really occur to me while we were filming.
Yeah, well, it definitely, it was cracking me up because I was like, oh God, I've been to things like this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like, oh man, I hope I'm not this guy. But but yeah, it was a lot of fun, and yeah, everybody did a really good job in front of and behind the camera.
Yeah.
Um, so nicely done, sir.
I thank you very much.
Do you have anything else you're working on that we need to keep an eye out for?
Yeah, I just over the winter shot a feature film down in New Orleans.
Wow,
Um,
congrats.
Thanks. Yeah, yeah. Which is called Heartland Express,
Okay.
with on a Prentice Free Room, and not super similar to Homesick in subject matter, but a sort of similar kind of high concept, sort of absurdist. It's much more kind of gritty, grungy cult film. We shot on 16 millimeter, but some similar sort of threading the line from being funny and lighthearted, but also a little horror and thrillery, and certainly a genre film. So that was a lot of fun. Visually, those are always a lot of fun.
Well, circle us in when it comes time to
Yeah,
talk to
yeah,
you guys about it.
I will. I will.
And one last question. You mentioned 16 millimeter. Do you have a preference of digital or film?
I don't think I have a preference. I mean, I love shooting film when I can, and I'm very happy to see that it's still a format that is
Yeah.
available. But it certainly depends on the project completely, and there's pros and cons to both. And I am very aware of the like ongoing conversation about being able to emulate film and all of Steve Yedlin's work on that, and I sort of stubbornly resist those findings, even though I have no real concrete argument against it. But I love it's just such a having it be such a tangible process is so much fun, regardless of the final product. So if no other reason than that, I love doing it when I can.
That is a super diplomatic answer. Um, but also I guess I kind of feel the same way. It's kind of like, well, what works for the project? So
Yeah, yeah.
well, very good. Listen, I'm gonna cut you loose now, but to reference the film. But yeah, really good work on the film, and best of luck on this one and your upcoming feature.
Thanks so much.
Everybody, again. Oh, you know what? Do we know where we can see Homesick?
That's a good question. We just had our premiere at South by. I don't know what other screenings we have coming up. I think we'll probably I think we're still sort of in the mix with a couple festivals in the coming months, but I'm sure it will be online somewhere soon.
Cool,
Yeah.
cool, because it's worth checking out.
Well, I love it.
Everybody, this is Cory Fraiman-Lott, the cinematographer for a short called Homesick. It just premiered at South by Southwest, and you should watch it. Cory, best of luck on this release and your
Thank,
future feature.
thank you so much.
All
Appreciate
right,
it.
buddy. Take care.
Bye.